Have you ever wondered how the Soviet Union, one of the most powerful entities of the 20th century, functioned? A question indeed that has piqued the curiosity of many. The Soviet Union, a monolith on the global stage, was a unique blend of political ideologies and governance that stood in stark contrast to the democratic systems prevalent in much of the world. Born out of the tumultuous years following the First World War, this superpower dominated the political, military, and ideological arenas for much of the 20th century. Its unique governing style, deeply rooted in socialist principles, was a veritable labyrinth of hierarchies and bureaucracies, all working in unison to propel the Soviet Union towards its envisioned utopia. Understanding the functioning of the Soviet Union's government isn't just a historical exercise, but a fascinating exploration into a system that left an indelible imprint on the world. Now, let's delve into the inception of this unique government system. The Soviet Union's government, unlike any other, was born out of a revolution. Our story begins in the early 20th century, in a Russia that was struggling beneath the weight of war, poverty, and an autocratic monarchy. The Russian people, tired of their circumstances, yearned for change, setting the stage for one of the most significant events in world history, the 1917 Russian Revolution. This revolution was not a spontaneous event, but rather the result of years of escalating discontent and political agitation. The Bolshevik Party, under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, played a pivotal role in these events. The Bolsheviks, meaning members of the majority, were a radical faction of the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party who believed in the overthrow of the Tsarist regime and the establishment of a socialist government. The Bolsheviks' opportunity came in the form of the February Revolution of 1917, which marked the beginning of the end for Tsar Nicholas II. The Tsar abdicated and a provisional government took over, but it was weak and unable to effectively address the nation's problems. Seeing their chance, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, launched the October Revolution later that same year. They stormed the Winter Palace, the seat of the provisional government, and declared the establishment of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. The years that followed were marked by a brutal civil war as the Bolsheviks fought to maintain control against various anti-Bolshevik forces. However, by 1922, the Bolsheviks emerged victorious, and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the Soviet Union, was formally established. This new nation was built on the principles of Marxism-Leninism, a political ideology that sought to create a classless, stateless society where the means of production were owned communally. Power was centralized in the hands of the Communist Party, which sought to control every aspect of life in the Soviet Union. With the revolution's success, a new form of government was born. And with this birth, the world was forever changed, as the Soviet Union would go on to play a pivotal role in shaping the course of the 20th century. The Soviet Union's government structure was complex and multi-layered. Diving into the labyrinthine system of the Soviet Union, we find a trifecta of power. The Communist Party, the Politburo, and the Supreme Soviet each played a distinct role, yet were inextricably interwoven in this grand tapestry of governance. At the heart of the Soviet Union's political structure was the Communist Party. It was the lifeblood that coursed through the veins of the Soviet Union's body politic. Its members, dedicated to the party's ideals, permeated every level of society and government. Above the party sat the Politburo, the executive committee for the Communist Party. It was the brain of the operation, making key decisions on policy, economy, and internal affairs. The Politburo was small, typically comprising between 15 to 25 members, making it a concentrated power center. The Supreme Soviet, on the other hand, was the legislative arm of the Soviet government, akin to a parliament. This body, composed of two chambers, the Soviet of the Union and the Soviet of Nationalities, held the power to pass laws. Yet in reality, the Supreme Soviet often rubber-stamped decisions made by the Politburo. The Communist Party, the Politburo, and the Supreme Soviet were the key pillars that upheld the Soviet government. But the structure didn't stop there. Beneath these ran a complex network of local and regional governments trade unions and other organizations, all tied to the Communist Party. In the Soviet Union, power flowed from the top down, from the Politburo, through the party, to the farthest reaches of the Soviet state. But the party was also the source of upward mobility, a conduit for ambitious individuals to rise through the ranks, gaining prestige, power, and influence. This intricate structure, a blend of theory and practice, ideology and pragmatism, was not without its contradictions. Yet, it was this very structure that held the sprawling Soviet Union together for over 7 decades. This intricate structure of power had a profound influence on the lives of Soviet citizens. The Soviet Union's government operated under a planned economy and strict control. This is a key point to understand when discussing the operation of the Soviet Union's government. In a planned economy, the government makes all decisions about the production and distribution of goods. It's like a grand chess game where the government moves the pieces, dictating who makes what, who gets what, and at what price. The Soviet Union was a prime example of this system, with the state controlling all major aspects of the economy. There was no room for the free market or private enterprise. The government decided what would be produced, how much would be produced, and set the prices for all goods and services. This level of control allowed the government to mobilize resources quickly, especially during times of war or for major projects. However, it also resulted in inefficiencies and a lack of innovation due to the absence of competition. But the government's control wasn't limited to the economy, it extended to other aspects of life as well. Censorship was a central part of the Soviet Union's modus operandi. The state controlled all media outlets, including newspapers, radio, and television. This control over information allowed the government to shape public opinion, suppress dissent, and maintain its grip on power. Moreover, the Soviet Union's government exerted control over culture and society. It dictated what could be taught in schools, what could be read, and even what could be said in public. This level of control allowed the government to shape the minds and hearts of its citizens, promoting a sense of unity and loyalty to the state. In essence, the operation of the Soviet Union's government was characterized by a high degree of control over all aspects of life. From the economy to the media, from education to culture, the government's hand was felt everywhere. This control allowed the state to shape the Soviet Union as it saw fit, creating a society that was unique in many ways. The government's control extended to all corners of society, shaping the Soviet Union's unique identity. Despite its power and control, the Soviet Union eventually dissolved. An amalgamation of various factors led to this historic dissolution, which played out on the world stage in 1991. Economic difficulties were one of the major catalysts. The Soviet Union's centralized, planned economy, which had once been its strength, was now a liability. The country was grappling with a stagnating economy, plagued by inefficiencies, corruption, and a lack of innovation. The arms race with the United States was a significant financial drain, and the country's vast resources were stretched thin. Political unrest was another significant contributor. The Soviet Union was a mosaic of different nationalities and cultures, and there was a growing demand for greater autonomy amongst these republics. Nationalistic sentiments were on the rise, leading to widespread unrest and calls for independence. In the midst of these turbulent times, Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, enacted a series of reforms. His policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, were aimed at revitalizing the Soviet Union. However, they inadvertently accelerated its downfall. Gorbachev's glasnost policy encouraged freedom of speech and the press, which led to open criticism of the government. Suddenly, the faults of the Soviet system were being exposed and discussed publicly. This led to a loss of faith in the government and increased demands for political change. His perestroika policy sought to reform the Soviet Union's economic system. However, it led to further economic instability as the country struggled to transition from a centralized economy to a market-based one. By late 1991, the situation had become untenable. On Christmas Day, Gorbachev resigned as president, and the Soviet flag above the Kremlin was replaced with the Russian tricolor. The Soviet Union was officially dissolved and replaced by the Commonwealth of Independent States, marking the end of the Cold War. The dissolution of the Soviet Union marked the end of an era and a unique form of government. The world watched as the formidable superpower crumbled, and the map was redrawn. It was a testament to the fact that no political system, however powerful, is immune to change and upheaval. The Soviet Union's government, from its inception to its dissolution, was a remarkable entity. It was born out of a revolution that promised to dismantle old structures and create a new world order. This new system, a socialist republic, was unique in its approach, breaking away from conventional political models of its time. The structure of this government, with its various councils and committees, was a complex web designed to distribute power among the workers. Its operation, marked by a mix of central planning and local autonomy, made it a fascinating study in governance. The dissolution of the Soviet Union, a world superpower, sent shockwaves through the global political landscape. This event marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new geopolitical order. From revolution to dissolution, the Soviet Union's government was a testament to the power and intricacy of human political structures. It's a reminder of how politics can shape nations, influence history, and leave an indelible mark on the world.